right, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Please find your seats, take your seats. Welcome, all of you, welcome. I just said find your seats. You can keep talking, I don't mind. Oh, it's great to see such a lovely crowd. Give yourselves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Great crowd, great crowd. Yeah. Any first-time visitors to Rwanda? Any first-timers? First time? Show of hands, show of hands. Goodness gracious me. Give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. One of the cleanest and most beautiful cities on the continent. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not even from here, by the way. It is what it is. All right, we're just waiting for the Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda to arrive. He should be doing that very shortly. And then we kick off this event. Thanks so much for making it, folks. It's great to see you all here. And in this day and age of digital and social media, we're using a hashtag. I'd like to give it to you right now as we wait. The hashtag for this event, the whole 4-day event, is AGRF 2018. AGRF 2018, all right? And here's the trick. If you copy me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and my handle is the same in all three, at Koinange Jeff, at Koinange Jeff. All right, you copy me, and I'll be able to retweet and resend to, let me just quickly update my social media. As of this morning, 2.1 million followers. So, yeah, round of applause, please. Thank you. I mean, goodness, how many have 1 million followers in this room? Let's recognize here, huh? So, not follow me, you don't have to follow me, but copy me, copy me at Koinange Jeff, and let's make this event trend, as they say, trend. Because did you know that Rwanda is the only country that I know of on the continent that has free Wi-Fi as soon as you land at the airport? Did you know that? Round of applause for these folks, man. Free Wi-Fi. You get into public transportation, there's free Wi-Fi in the bus. Can you imagine that? Where else do you have that? Do you have that in New York or in the subway? No, you can't have that in the subways, but there is none of that anywhere else. These guys have got their act together. So please, let's tweet. Let's make this happen, folks. It's going to be a great event, okay? Again, copy me at Koinange Jeff. You can follow me too. 2 million followers and counting is not bad. Are we ready to have a good time, ladies and gentlemen? Only one person is, that's fine. We're working on it. Oh, the other thing is, did you know that the organizers of the AGRF had to stop registration for this event? They had to stop registration. 3,100 plus people had registered and they said, too much, this is it, no more. Can you imagine? Is it because we're in Kigali? Yeah? I'd like to think it's because they knew I was going to be here. But that's just me. That's just me. All right. So, someone shout out from the crowd, how far away have you come from? Give me the farthest place. Anybody? Ah. All right. I heard Kenya, Zambia. Where else? There you go, my man. Round of applause for Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. Trinis are in the house. What? Mexico City? Israel, nice, nice. Where else? Did someone say Iowa? Is that potato country? Is that potato land? Oh, that's Idaho. That's Idaho, Iowa, same thing. No. My bad. All right, Iowa, or else? Sudan. Khartoum or Nice, nice, nice. Where else? Rwanda? Burundi? Gabon, that's nice, okay. Ghana, very good, yep. Newest nation, South Sudan? All right, my man. Senegal, someone said? There's someone from the Gambia as well. Cameroon's nice, nice. Okay, anyone who's not from Africa here, because, you know. You know what I'm saying? Beijing? Ni hao ma. California, nice. Saudi? Colombia? Oh, arigato, konnichiwa. Look at that. Missouri? As in Missouri, Missouri, or Missouri sana? Kansas City, Missouri. Nice. Very good. Very good. Anywhere else? I mean, we're still waiting for the Prime Minister. We might as well talk, right? They're paying me to talk to you guys, so let's talk. Yeah. Now you know why I wasn't at the other AGRF, right? Okay. So, DJ, there's a song I really love to play called Africa by Yemi Alade and Sauti Sol. You think you can give us that to get the crowd going? Yemi Alade. You've heard the song Sauti Sol and Yemi Alade? If you haven't, take a listen. DJ, don't let me down, man. These guys are watching me for the first time. Don't let me down, DJ. DJ, let's go to the song. All right. I tried. Hey, Tebe, what's happening, man? Here we go. It's called Africa. Sauti Sol and Yemi Alade. All right, round of applause for Sauti Sol and Yemi Alade. All right. You guys getting tired of this? Or I said, round of applause for Sauti Sol and Yemi Alade. That's what I'm talking about. It says, nowhere be like Africa, nowhere be like home. As we wait for the arrival of the chief guest, ladies and gentlemen, we will be taking all kinds of musical requests. If you have a song in mind you'd like us to play, please shout it out. There we go. Requests are coming in thick. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Edouard Ngirente. Please rise. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have a seat. His Excellency Edouard Ngirente, Prime Minister, Republic of Rwanda. Dr. Gérardine Mukeshimana, Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Republic of Rwanda. Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President, Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA. Excellencies, distinguished guests, captains of industry, heads of organizations, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, first-time visitors to Rwanda, good morning. Welcome to one of the most beautiful cities, I said earlier, one of the most beautiful cities on the continent. No doubt it's also one of the cleanest, if not the cleanest. Congratulations, all of you. Let's give them a round of applause. Welcome to the 8th Africa Green Revolution Forum 2018. And like I was saying a little earlier, Dr. Agnes Kalibata told me this morning that they had to stop registration, Mr. Prime Minister. They had to stop it because so many people wanted to come to this event. Imagine that. And I told them it's because I was here. That's why they were all like, well, it's because we're in your city, great city of Kigali. Thanks for that. The theme for this year, ladies and gentlemen, lead, measure, grow. You will see it all over the place. Lead, measure, grow. Where are we taking agriculture on the continent? It's become a buzzword now. 10 years ago, no one would talk about it. They'd whisper the word agriculture on the continent. Now, agriculture is a buzzword. And it's great to see that, yes, people are making agriculture, for lack of a better word, a bit sexy, if I may say so. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screens in front of you, where we have a video of what AGRF is all about.
Once again, a moment of transformation lies before Africa. Your leadership will make the difference. In 2016, you seized the moment.
The African Development Bank has launched its Feed Africa strategy. We plan to invest $24 billion over the next 10 years in support of African countries and the private sector.
Over the last 15 years, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has invested more than $9 billion in Africa, 4 billion of those in agriculture. And we are committed to keep on investing to help Africa. And in the next 5 years, we will invest another $5 billion in Africa.
My President Uhuru, I have a commitment to make after this session. I think we are investing $350 million of additional loans to farmers in the next 2 to 5 years.
Everyone is finally speaking with one language, saying, seize the day, saying it's Africa's moment, saying the time for Africa's green revolution is now.
Commitments were made that would accelerate Africa's journey to agricultural transformation. In 2017, you created a path to prosperity.
Si quelqu'un veut savoir ce que le secteur agricole peut apporter à une économie, qu'il vienne voir la Côte d'Ivoire.
I also supporting the fantastic and much needed institution AGRA to implement its new strategy to work with African governments to further the agricultural transformation by committing $50 million over the next 5 years to that.
Now, in 2018, you have a new mandate to lead, measure, and grow, because progress, as usual, is not enough. Hosted under the leadership of the government of Rwanda, the 2018 AGRF will take stock, evaluate actions, and learn from compelling evidence from the continent. As the continent's leaders, stakeholders, and partners, we need to inspire effective ways of turning agriculture into thriving enterprises. The stakes are high. The people of Africa are waiting for us to take the lead and make a difference in their lives and their futures. Africa is calling us. Let the agricultural revolution roll on. All of us here must step up and energize our green revolution. How will you lead?
All right. Round of applause there, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, that is one of the hashtags we're using for these sessions in the next 4 days. How will you lead? And we can also use the hashtag AGRF 2018. AGRF 2018, hashtag how will you lead? I said we have free Wi-Fi from coast to coast in this country. Let's use it up. Let's use up the bundles. And let's make this event trend. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, to set the stage for us on this opening day, I'd like to welcome on the stage the President of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, Dr. Agnes Kalibata.
Thank you, Jeff. And by the way, Jeff is not the African Green Revolution moderator because he was in the last one. He's not always there. Just wanted to underscore. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, we are really excited that you could join us to start off this meeting today. Mine is going to be very easy, but before I go into the details of this welcome address, I wanted to recognize that there's someone who would have loved to be here with us today, had actually registered to be here with us today, but could not, for reasons that were beyond his. So let's stand up for 1 minute and recognize, take a moment of silence to recognize Mr. Kofi Annan, who was at the center of the founding of AGRA. Thank you. So we are very excited and very proud to bring the African Green Revolution here to Kigali, Rwanda. AGRA is, as an institution, actually started out with the call from Kofi Annan, as I said, for a uniquely African Green Revolution. The word unique was premised on the fact that people thought that Africa needed certain technologies to be able to drive a green revolution. And thanks to the work that we've all done, CG centers, AGRA, lots of institutions, NAS, governments themselves, we actually believe that Africa now has a significant bank of technologies to call on, a significant bank of models to call on to be able to drive an African green revolution. From Malabo, one of the things that has come up is the fact that we actually need to not just talk about technologies and how they could change farmers' lives, but we also need to talk about how those things come together from a leadership perspective. We were worried in 2016 that people were beginning to turn away from African agriculture. We seized the moment, and you saw how that re-energized the environment. You just saw it in the video, how that re-energized the environment. So with a bank of technologies, with significant interest in putting resources on the table, what is missing? Why are we still, 60 years after our independence, still the only continent that has not got food security independence and economic independence? These are things we must worry about. These are things we must talk about. And not just talk about, but take leadership from what Malabo did. Start measuring our progress. Start holding ourselves accountable for the progress that we want to see. That's the theme of this conference. Can we actually start seeing, there's significant leadership. Can we start tracking it like we did with what the African Union did earlier this year with the biannual review, where they actually came up and were able to show that progress can be tracked, and we can actually start working now with the knowledge of the progress we've made or failed to make. So this is really the center of this conference this year. This conference recognizes that capacity and capability to deliver is now our major challenge. So here, the meeting we are launching today, the report we are launching today is at the center of that. What is it that is impeding or holding us back? Given everything we just heard, given everything now we know, what is holding us back? That comes together in the Africa Agricultural Status Report of this year that will be launched at the end of this meeting. So we really want to focus this meeting on capacity, capability to deliver, and then the theme of the conference. Let's lead, let's provide leadership, let's measure our progress, and let's see if we are growing. And if we are not growing, let's do things differently. How would we track our progress? How will you lead? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the conference. It's going to be a 4-day conference. Today, the key event is this. Later, around 5, we have a plenary, as you've seen in the program, which also talks about a major issue on this conference, resilience, given where we are at in the world today. Then tomorrow, we have lots of events that all look at different things, different areas of interest. On Friday, we have one of the major things we have a ministerial. We have over 25 ministers from across the continent. And really the key thing we'll be talking about is what we are saying here today. How will you lead as a minister, but also what is holding you back, and how can anybody, among us, how can we all support to ensure that we get where we want to get? On Saturday, of course, we'll conclude with the high-level summit, where we have excellencies, heads of state, join us and talk about how they will lead differently so that we can achieve a green revolution we want to see. So with those few remarks, I would like to thank you for coming. I wish you a very good conference. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Once again, a round of applause for Dr. Agnes Kalibata there. And Dr. Kalibata, you forgot to mention just one little thing. There's a whole bunch of people here who've never been to Rwanda before. A whole bunch of, raise your hands, folks. Let's see those hands again. Raise those hands. Where are the lights? Where are the house lights, folks? I can't see. I'm a little blind. But give them a round of applause, folks. Give them. You know they'll be coming back, right? You know they'll be coming back over and over again to this beautiful city. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, to give her welcoming remarks on this AGRF 2018, please welcome the Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Animal Resources in the Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Dr. Gérardine Mukeshimana.
Dr. Edward Ngirente, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the President of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, honorable ministers present, excellencies, distinguished colleagues, good morning. On behalf of the people and the government of Rwanda, I am pleased to welcome you all, especially those that just showed that they are in Rwanda for the first time, and a warm welcome to the Africa Green Revolution Forum, the 2018 edition. I also want to thank you so much for giving us the privilege to host you at this important forum that is going to gather heads of states and government, former heads of states and government, farmers and farmers organizations, top executive of global businesses and financial institutions, senior government officials, development partners, civil society, media from the continent and beyond, to discuss and advance initiatives that are very dear to all of us, that is accelerating the transformation of agriculture in Africa, to unlock the treasures that are hidden in this $1 trillion industry, to drive better livelihoods of our people and the prosperity of our continent. And as mentioned before, the theme of this year's edition is lead, measure, grow to enable new pathways that turns smallholders in sustainable agribusinesses. We are congregating here to track the progress made by agricultural transformation efforts all around Africa, to share the lessons, debate what worked, what didn't, and why, and shape up new ideas and actions to continue supporting Africa agricultural priorities, scale up innovative initiatives that are working, and move our continent to the next level. Yesterday when I was trying to draft my talk points, and I remembered 20 years ago when I was starting my career as a plant breeder, and I thought I knew ins and outs of the Green Revolution, but I realized that I had forgotten all of it. So I was like, let me see if the new way of defining it can refresh my mind. So I came up with this easy way that the Cambridge Dictionary has defined it. It says just large increase of food production around the world because of better farming technology, simple. And then I was like, oh, that doesn't reflect what I knew Borag did. And then I was like, let's look at the business side. And then not much difference was like big increase in production of crops during 1960s and 70s because of use of modern methods. And then I was wondering if since then much has changed. But when you look at what happens, what we are trying to achieve here is the drive of prosperity. When you look at where the Green Revolution took place and how agricultural productivity had pulled along the industry, the service, all of what we see today in those areas, you realize that agriculture is a big deal. So I believe that still we have that political will that worked back then. And of course, there are some differences that the climate has changed. The population has grown much more. But as the previous speaker has mentioned, We have accumulated more evidence, we have accumulated more data, we have accumulated more technologies. We have more tools and means, so I don't see anything that can stop us to move as fast as we could be moving. So we just need to take African agriculture beyond just guaranteeing the food security to the farming communities. The sector has to grow, has to create jobs to a young and growing population. It is set to drive the continental and international trades, and the agribusiness is to reach the $1 trillion, as I mentioned before, if what we are called to do today, we do it the right way. So the question now that we have been asked for the next 4 days is how do we make sure that the businesses of the smallholder farmers that are producing 80% of our food get to be fully integrated into the whole ecosystem. So my wish is that during this conference, we get beyond just citing the numbers and the potentials. And we need to use this platform to get the African agriculture to the transformation that is true to its meaning. So once again, welcome to Kigali. Thank you, Jeff, you have made my life easier. I hope you already feel at home. And thank you again for having given us these 4 days to be with you, to deliberate and commit to the advancement of this important agenda. So, Right Honorable Prime Minister, it is my distinct honor to invite you to deliver the opening remarks for this meeting. Thank you.
Honorable Ministers, President of Alliance of Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. I'm very delighted to warmly welcome to Rwanda all of you delegates to this 8th edition of the African Green Revolution Forum. The government of Rwanda thanks the leadership of the African Green Revolution Forum for having chosen Rwanda as the host of this year. This conference comes at an opportune time, a time when our continent is highly committed to addressing agriculture and food security issues. These issues are critical for the socio-economic transformation of Africa over the last 50 years, as highlighted in the African Union Agenda 2063. I wish to recognize the importance of this year's theme, which is Lead, Measure, Grow, enabling new pathway to turn smallholder into sustainable agribusiness. Equally important, I want to acknowledge the topic of the 2018 African Agriculture Status Report on strengthening government capacity to drive agricultural transformation. These two topics speak perfectly to the government of Rwanda's way of doing business under the leadership of His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, over the past decades. Distinguished guests, over the past decade, most of African countries have been doing well in terms of economic growth. However, this economic growth should not make us forget the daunting challenges of improving the quality and the standard of life of Africans starting by feeding our people. Despite the enormous potential for agricultural production on the continent, Africa is still lagging behind other regions of the world in terms of agricultural production. In this regard, the common challenges include limited use of modern agro inputs, limited access to finance, weak access to markets, especially for smallholder farmers, limited mechanization, underdeveloped irrigation systems, and inadequate extension services. There are many initiatives being done by many countries and institutions that can serve as a lesson to unlock the potential of agriculture. Agriculture transformation should aim at eliminating hunger and malnutrition, and this will address the issue of stunting, which negatively affects African human capital and our economy in general. Taking Africa's agriculture to the next level will require, among others, strong measures to translate existing strategies into tangible action. It is our common understanding that delivering sustainable agriculture transformation in Africa will require extraordinary efforts. Business as usual will not work. We need a strong commitment to implement strategies that we already have in place in most of our countries. As we all know, having a policy in place is one thing, and implement it in an appropriate manner is another. Transforming African agriculture sector will also require an active involvement of African states in driving this process. It is in the same spirit that in June 2014, African Union heads of states and the government adopted the Declaration on Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Transformation in Malabo as a commitment to the comprehensive agriculture development framework that was adopted in 2023 in Maputo, Mozambique. To track the progress in meeting countries' commitment and highlight the key areas of improvement, tools including the regular review and Africa Agriculture Transformation Scorecard were set up. Distinguished guests, the theme of this 8th edition of the African Green Revolution Forum is also reflected in the 2018 Africa Agriculture Status Report. It rightly focuses on the essential aspect of strengthening government capacity to drive agricultural transformation. This report and the previous ones, such as the 2017 that focused on business of smallholder agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa, the 2016 edition on progress toward agricultural transformation in Africa, and the 2015 edition on youth in agriculture should inspire all of us for actions. Without leadership, measurement, and evidence-based planning and accountability in program implementation, Africa would not be able to consolidate the modernization of its agriculture and agro-business. Our expectation from this forum is for participants to strike deals that address fundamentals, impediments in the delivery of agriculture transformation in Africa. There is a need for policies being designed and implemented in different countries to cater for the following priority areas: use of modern agro input, including fertilizers and improved seeds, linking farmers to markets and strengthening agriculture value chain by promoting investment in infrastructure, scaling up existing innovation and market information system, warehouse and market-based risk management tools, developing irrigation and mechanization, building institutional capacities for agriculture transformation by putting in place plans and delivery mechanisms across public and private sectors, increasing youth participation in agriculture by encouraging youth to take over the aging African farmers by becoming engine behind the development of new agricultural enterprises, not just in farming, but also in the processing, packaging, and returning of food stuff. Promoting research and innovation to bridge the existing yield gaps through productivity, enhancing and labor-saving technologies. Skill development by providing adequate agriculture education and appropriate trainings. Ensuring value addition of agricultural commodities for enhanced intra-Africa trade by focusing on agriculture infrastructure development as well as preventing post-harvest losses. Private sector involvement in agriculture sector at all levels of the value chains. And above all, giving our citizens the ability to have decent lives that we all deserve. Distinguished guests, 2 months ago, the government of Rwanda, in collaboration with our partners, launched the 4th strategic plan for agricultural transformation as one of the tools for Rwanda to achieve its agricultural goals. In our national strategy for transformation, agricultural sector is planned to grow by 10% annually. This will significantly contribute to the creation of jobs, food security, and industrialization. This ambitious plan will require significant resources. The government of Rwanda is committed to working with all the partners to ensure its implementation. In conclusion, let me once again thank the organizers and the participants of this high-level forum. I wish you a fruitful discussion and deliberations. Rwanda is looking forward to learning best practice from this forum. On this note, I'm pleased to declare the 2018 African Green Revolution officially open.
And Prime Minister?
I thank you for your kind attention.
Prime Minister, I'll keep you on the stage if you don't mind, and I'd like to ask the Minister and Dr. Kalibata, Dr. Mukeshimana, to go to that side and officially launch the AASR. This side, please. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. And the copies of the AASR 2018 will be available for everyone in this room. Thanks once again. Round of applause for the Prime Minister, the Minister, and the President of the AGRA. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. So, about 50 years ago, that's right, 1968, my next guest wrote a book. It was entitled Agriculture and the Path to Industrialization. It became a bestseller, used as a playbook by African presidents across the continent, including the late great Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. 50 years and 10 books later, that's right, He's just released his latest book. It's called Agricultural Development and Economic Transformation, fast becoming a bestseller. Oh, did I mention he's 92 years old? That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, to tell us about the key findings of the AASR 2018, please welcome on the stage Professor Emeritus at Cornell University and also President of the John Mellor Associates, Professor John W. Mellor. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, but I've reached the age at which I can't have anyone add any couple of years. You added 2 years to my age. I'm only 90. It was a great privilege to be asked by AGRA to work on this book, which has just been released. And it's a special privilege to be here to address such a distinguished audience. I feel that, there's so many people with so many titles, I can't go through them at this. But it is a great privilege, and thank you all for being willing to listen to me for a while. I could only give this is a very comprehensive book, covers a wide range of topics. It's a scholarly book. 6 chapters are written by people who reviewed intensively the literature in the area. So you read this book, you'll be well aware of all the literature that's relevant to these topics which we're taking up today. I could only give a brief flavor. I can't say, well, here are the 5 things that are really critical from this book. If you know those, you've got the book in hand. It's just not true. There are many, many things, and we can't just pick out a few of them. The book is not about what to do. Africa is very fortunate in having an extremely intensive body of work on what to do to get agricultural growth which reduces poverty. You have CADEP, which is an extraordinarily detailed what to do book, and it's constantly kept up to date. This product from the African Union by a very distinguished group of largely African economists is a wonderful guideline to that. So this book and the topic that I'm dealing with today is not about what to do, but implementation, how to get it implemented. And there are a lot of people who would argue that the basic problem in Africa is not lack of knowing what to do, it's lack of implementation. So this book is concerned with the implication issues. The book is very clear to what we all know, but which we need to be reminded of sometimes. Agriculture is the sine qua non of private sector activity. It's private sector farmers and private sector businessmen doing the marketing and providing the input. Private sector is what makes the agricultural sector grow. But agriculture is very peculiar. It's not like the industrial sector. You can find no examples of countries achieving 3-4% rate of per capita agricultural growth without a major synchronized effort from government. Government action, not just policy, but government actions are essential to rapid growth in the agricultural sector. And this book is very clear about that, and then it runs through the various elements that are crucial in that effort. One of the critical elements to forwarding agriculture, you have to keep in mind that agricultural growth is it's not a Ministry of Agriculture function. Ministry of Agriculture, of course, is crucial, but rapid agricultural growth requires efforts all through the other ministries in the government, including infrastructure and certain education and so forth and so on, and non-government agencies. So that one of the critical issues that the book treats is where is the political will for dealing with this very complex set of issues. The book is a little disappointing in the sense that it really doesn't tell us, because it's not possible to tell us, what outsiders can do to get political will. Political will comes from within the country. We can observe, and the book is quite clear about this, that the more democratic a government, the more likely it is to have political will to do agriculture, because democratic countries are concerned with votes, and there are a large number of votes in the rural sector, and small commercial farmers who produce 85% of the agricultural output are a crucial element in the politics of the rural sector. So as you become more democratic, either directly or at least becoming concerned with whether you can get votes or not, whether you have popular support, becomes an important element in getting the political will for agricultural growth. And the book has a long section dealing with that. If you're going to have effective agriculture, but you know, by the way, a lot of what I'm saying here has already been said by the people who are doing it in Rwanda, so I feel a little bit embarrassed that I'm sort of just repeating some of the things that they've said. They know what they're doing and they're having great success. Same thing's been true in Ethiopia, where I spent a great deal of time. There has to be a vision, because agricultural growth cuts across so many sectors and involves so many activities. And the only way you can have a nationwide vision is for the head of the state to be prime behind the vision and behind the effort. We saw this very clearly in the statements from Rwanda, where the head of state has been absolutely central to the effort and giving it guidance and giving it popular support. We saw the very same thing in Ethiopia. The head of state was crucial. When I mixed in Ethiopia with peoples in the various ministries, they were all very worried that they weren't getting their job done on getting agriculture moving, and what would the prime minister or the president say about that? So that vision coming internally is very important. We can help a little bit on the outside with vision, trying to point out some of the key elements of a vision. One place where I think we failed from the outside is acting as though agriculture did nothing but produce food for poor people. That's not very helpful if you're trying to have a vision of agriculture's road as head of state. Yes, you're interested in food for poor people, but agriculture has a much more important role than simply food for poor people. And by the way, I never met a farmer who thought what his job was to produce food for poor people. All the farmers I talk about think their job is to generate income, and then income can be used for so many different types of things. So that we do want to have a vision, but that vision has to be a very broad vision that cuts across the many activities of the agricultural sector. I'm going to give you a short sentence that I hope you will retain and think about, because it leads you to understanding the very broad elements of the importance of agriculture to overall growth. The statement is, the faster the agricultural sector grows, the faster its relative importance declines. Would you like to have you have a country that's heavily agricultural and you'd like it to become much more diversified into industry and so on? Accelerating agricultural growth will accelerate the rate of decline not the rate of decline of agriculture, the rate of decline of the relative importance of agriculture. That's because of the consumption patterns and all the things that lead from that as you get growth in agricultural income. The book is clear about the many different aspects of agricultural growth, and I won't go into those, but it's clear, since there are so many parts involved in agricultural growth, coordination of those activities and measurement of the activities is very important, and the book goes into that at great length. The overlying point that I want to make from this book is that the critical problem in getting agriculture moving in African countries now is the lack of experienced personnel in the key positions in government which are essential to rapid growth in agriculture. That means there's a tremendous role for technical assistance from the African Union, from one part of Africa to another, and from inside technical assistance. There's a huge task of building this body of highly trained, practical people working on the many, many aspects of getting the agricultural sector growing. I'm going to stop there, and my colleagues will give you some of the key minor points here and there from the I don't say minor points, major points from the book. Thank you very much for your attention.
You okay, Prof? Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Professor John Mellor there, Professor Emeritus, 90 years old. Give or take 2. Thanks. All right, folks, straight into the first panel. And I'd like to invite on stage Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa. He's the Director, Department of Rural Economy and Agriculture, African Union. Mr. Jonathan Syde, Head of Inclusive Growth and Private Sector Development Practice at the Tony Blair Institute. Dr. David Peary, Sub-Regional Coordinator for Eastern Africa, Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Mr. Mamadou Biteye, Managing Director, Africa Regional Office, Rockefeller Foundation. And last but not least, Dr. Holger Cray, Head, Africa Agriculture Policy Unit at the World Bank, or is it the bank? All right. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so much for being a part of this. In fact, let me just scoot on over and I'll get close. All right. Thank you again, gentlemen, for this part. You've heard what Professor Mellor had to say. You guys have been part of this report as well. So, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, you first. It is widely recognized that agricultural transformation is yet to take place at a continental level, as had been envisaged by the CAADP framework. What is holding countries back? What do you think is holding countries back? And what needs to be done to put countries back on track for agricultural transformation?
Thank you, Jeff. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture of the AU, the Minister of Rwanda, and the President of AGRA, all protocols observed. First of all, agricultural transformation means different things to different people. And I will not spend time to get into that subject. But for us at the African Union Commission, or the AU in general, our heads of state and government made the job easier for us. As mentioned by the Prime Minister and also the Minister of Agriculture in Rwanda, the AU heads of state and government adopted what is popularly known as the Malabo Declaration on agricultural growth and transformation in 2014. And in there are two key phrases: agricultural growth and transformation, and shared prosperity and improved livelihoods. In other words, the vision of the African leaders had a purpose, not just to transform agriculture, but to ensure that it is shared, that growth is shared, and also leads to improved livelihoods. And in line with the CAADP agenda, the AU heads of state and government had key high-level results that they expected to see from a transformed agriculture. And that is reduced poverty by having poverty by 2025, ending hunger on the continent by 2025, creating jobs, especially for youth and women, improving nutrition outcomes, and ensuring that households and production systems are resilient. So our leaders' vision is very clear about what the expectation is from a transformed agriculture sector.
Okay, hold that thought. Let me go to Mr. Jonathan Syde there and ask him, strong political will is critical if African governments are to drive agriculture towards transformation. Does this will exist in most countries? And how can this be cultivated across the continent?
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, definitely. My organization works in 14 different governments at the highest level across the continent, and we can definitely say there is very strong passion and drive to develop the agriculture sector at all levels of government, from the highest level all the way down. The challenge fundamentally lies in sort of building the system as a whole, the economic system out there, the government system, as well as the political system. All these three need to combine. And I think in terms of cultivation, there are three main things that I'd like to mention in terms of how we can support that. Number one is supporting leaders in a much more flexible way, in a much more responsive way that helps them succeed within their own political system, and in a way that incorporates this whole of government approach that Professor Meller mentioned. The second is really helping governments also coordinate and become synchronized. Government is not one agency, it's a range of different ministries and agencies, and helping them actually get on the same page to better understand their role in developing value chains is critical. And the third is helping develop the political economy, which is what allows the political will to really come out much more for a revolution. And that requires us particularly investing in domestic SMEs, which are quite critical for building the value chains and giving political ammunition for leaders in government to drive an agenda.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. David Peary, let me ask you this. Many external actors, including yours, the FAO, have been supporting government efforts in agriculture in Africa over the years. But this has not brought about transformation, let's face it. What have you learned, and what should these agencies do different going forward in supporting governments to transform agriculture?
You are right. Our role, FAO and others, our role, FAO and others, is really to support governments. So our success depends on the willingness of the governments to make requests to organizations like such as mine. We are advisory in nature, and also their willingness to listen where we offer the support. But in fact, there have been notable successes with regard to agriculture, some of which were mentioned already today. First, the Malthusian theory is dead. We know now that the world can produce enough food, even though the population is growing. We also know that despite the problems of climate change, communities and governments are becoming more resilient. I'll give you one example or two. In Southern Africa, 2 years ago, worst drought in 50 years. Not a single person died. Had that drought taken place 20 years earlier, it would have been a famine. In Eastern Africa, 2 years ago, there was also a big drought here. But the impact was limited. It means that the governments are becoming more resilient. We have also, I think, notable successes in agricultural research and extension, as well as agricultural education in general. Governments have also become increasingly sophisticated with regard to managing agriculture and food systems. Agriculture has also become quite sexy, as Dr. Kalibata rightly said, such that we have youths now, much more youths, going into agriculture than we used to have. I have a good example here of a young lady from Rwanda called Scovia. Scovia is a young, educated lady with a degree in ICT, but she's farming poultry. And there are thousands like her. So it means that there are some things that are going well. Have we done well all the time? No. There are fragmented support to countries. We have also policies that are inconsistent, that do not talk to each other. Even worse, they are sometimes outright contradictory.
Yeah. Hold that thought. That's very good. Let's pick it up from there. Mr. Mamadou Biteye, mon frère. So as an African who heads an important player in agriculture in Africa, where do you think organizations such as yourself in the philanthropy space should focus on in order to support countries to drive transformation?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think it was said, but let me just bring that again as a precision. What philanthropy does is not a substitute or even an option to what government can and should do. These efforts are actually complementary to what should be done, and we partner really to support states to implement their own vision of development. Where we stand out as philanthropic organizations is our ability to provide that catalytic investment, that risk capital that can help unveil or spur innovation. And when I talk about innovation here, I'm not just talking about disruptive technology or even new solutions. It includes also new ways of doing things, including in leadership and driving implementation. So then these innovations, new solutions actually, need even greater investment, either from government or from private sector or other actors, but also need sound policies actually to be able to go to scale. One of the things, and why this is very critical, because most of these governments are faced with many competing priorities in the context of really scarce resources. So really having to invest in untested solutions and roads is not a risk they can always take. So this is where I think that philanthropy more strategically can come in. The other thing is also probably supporting and building institutions that can complement the capacity of states. Some examples are here, and I'm proud to be here today because 12 years ago with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we supported that uniquely African revolution by supporting the creation of AGRA. Here we are, and what it is doing to support African governments in implementation. Absolutely. And I think that the other one is, if you think about the Agriculture Transformation Agency in Ethiopia, supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we see the contribution along the government of Ethiopia actually in turning around things. And examples are many. And I think that those are really among the places where actually philanthropy can come in strategically to support.
Absolutely. Kofi Annan must be smiling wherever he is right now. Must be smiling. He's proud of us. Dr. Holger Cray, the bank. So the bank has proposed strengthening the capacity of ministries of agriculture, particularly with regard to policy and not just investments, okay? So wasn't this not tried before in the past, and how different is it now?
Thank you, Jeff. And before I respond directly, let me tell you how excited I am to be here today under this theme. In 2016 at AGRF, and we saw the video, it was our co-host, Dr. Kalibata, who crafted the sentence saying the weakest factor in agriculture transformation in Africa is policy, not only technology. 2 years later, we do not only discuss an agenda that has stuck, but we actually have a status report on it. And it's in this environment that we basically call or propose that ministries of agriculture become much better at being that facilitator, at analyzing, brokering, and communicating their policy choices. And that is because we see a profound agriculture transformation going on right now. We see something that has not happened 10 years ago, and it's really reason for a positive narrative on agriculture. Let me quickly run you through the 5 main factors that I think warrant us believing that agriculture transformation is happening profoundly. First, the first difference to, say, 10 years ago, urbanization and a shift in target markets. Urbanization is the most pronounced demographic phenomenon on the continent at this point in time. The urban population will grow, and the urban population just consumes a completely different type of food, so-called PPP foods, more processed foods, more packaged foods, more perishable foods. And this becomes a target market, and it's our host country here that in its newer national agriculture policy also identifies the cities of the continent as a target market. Number 2, There's money to be made in sub-Saharan Africa agriculture today. Not only is there this growth in income I've alluded to, and consumers want more refined value-added foods, but we've seen an 800% increase in the value of food that's being traded in domestic value chains since the year 2000. This is significant. If somebody proposed to me to invest into another sector that can show these growth rates, I'd be investing. The third big difference, agrarian structure is changing, right? And I will only highlight that one really positive factor, that we see an increasing number of investor farms. Locals, Rwandans investing in Rwandan mid-sized farms, Tanzanians investing in Tanzanian mid-sized farms. These farms are very different. They employ, they invest, they attract service provision, and farmers hate me saying this, they are taxable and therewith become the center of attention of ministers of finance. Fourth, big data has finally, and IT has broken through economies of scale. It becomes applicable to the small farmer. Mobile soil scanners, Uberization of mechanization, handheld devices, digitization. I don't have to talk about that. And then my fourth point, and that's also a difference, there's a danger of reversal of some of the policies, and I come to what is really different. Institutional memory is weak. Nowadays, leaders might not remember mistakes made in the past, so there is a risk of reversal. And it's exactly in this environment that we propose ministries of agriculture to really strengthen, let me repeat this, their ability to analyze, broker, and communicate. Jeff, that's A, B, C, right? Analyze, broker, and communicate their policy choices. Not to be, as John said, the single ministry deciding, but become the chief orchestrator within a cabinet for the agricultural transformation.
Great stuff. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you all the same question going down, starting with you again, Dr. Bahigwa. Your biggest take-home from this, from the AASR 2018, what's your biggest take-home?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Looking at the report and the summary that Professor Miller gave, three things come out. One is the need for committed political leadership, both at head of state level, to ensure that the development of the agriculture sector meets both growth and political objectives. So that is very critical. Second, that both public and private sector investments in the agriculture sector are important. They are complementary to each other to drive agricultural transformation. And third, that we need to have regular platforms to review the performance of the agriculture sector. And those reviews have to be all-inclusive, mutual accountability towards the performance of the agriculture sector. Those are the three take-home messages from this report that I picked.
Thank you. Jonathan Said, you wrote one of the chapters. Tell us about that. What's your take-home?
Sure. I think the main take-home, I'd say, particularly from the chapter which I sort of spent time researching, is basically that, in a nutshell, I think we need to find a bit of a different model for supporting governments. And we need to invest much more in new and innovative models for supporting governments, as Mamadou mentioned. I think it's worth thinking of three disciplines that we need for a revolution, for an agriculture revolution. First is the agronomy, the tech side of things. There's a whole body of work there that's been happening for a number of years and is really important. The second is the economic side, and this is the private sector side. How do we actually help markets and value chains work all the way from markets down to the farmers and even further back to inputs? But the third body of work, which is still largely missing from the equation, is the business of government, is the business of management, of implementation, and of delivery, which includes also the politics is a key part of it. And I think in this last part, it's worth thinking of four bases, four areas that can really help governments take the lead. One is, of course, the vision, is how it has to be a government vision from the country itself, and how can partners really rally around that. The second is a strategy which marries both is economically robust, but also politically robust, that works in the local context. And these are not documents. These are what's in the mindset of the leadership in particular. And how we can support that to emerge requires a different model. The other is coordination, and really how do we help platforms, particularly for the coordination of government. Government is not one agency. It's a range of different agencies with different mandates. So how do you help get the policy coherent, the governments to coordinate so they can get policy coherence between energy, transport, the Revenue Authority, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, and Ministry of Agriculture, and others, so that you get the policy coherence that's needed for the actors in the value chain to really take off on a transformative way. And the last bit is the delivery mechanism. We mentioned EATA in Ethiopia. There are a range of different models that can work in different countries, and each country has to find its own model, but you need a structure for delivery that helps you fix the biggest problems that are holding back the value chains that can really transform each country.
Okay. Dr. David Perry, your take home.
Political will. I think the expressed political will, whether it's Maputo in 2003, whether it's Malabo in 2014, needs to be put into action. It's easy to sign documents and to agree to them. It is much more difficult to implement. And if only the governments implemented those decisions that they have made themselves, it's not somebody else, I think we would have agriculture in a different way. Second, the policy environment is extremely important for agriculture. So, in fact, what the Minister of Agriculture, or is it Agnes Kalibata, mentioned earlier on, the issue is that what happens in the agriculture sector depends very much on what happens in other sectors. The ministries of finance, the ministries of planning are perhaps even more important with respect to what happens in the agriculture sector than the Ministry of Agriculture. This is extremely important. And the third one is that agriculture is well and alive.
Okay, well and alive. Mamadou Biteye, your take home.
I think that the main thing, I can call it, the need to change mindset. I think this is best illustrated by the words of Professor Mark Olunga of Moi University. I think he might be in the room. He said this, and I quote him. He said, crops don't need rain. Crops need water. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's often sometimes that's Prof. Mark Olunga. Because oftentimes you see crops dying near a water stream because of lack of water when people are waiting for the rain to come. And I think that's similarly of what we've heard from Professor and what we've seen from the book. We need to change mindset because, as was said so many times, we know what to do. And why do we keep doing what we do when we know we do to do things differently? So for me, that's that mindset change that is really very important. Thank you.
Okay. Crops don't need rain. Crops need water.
It's not my words. It's Professor Mark Olunga.
Dr. Holger Cray, your biggest take home.
Ownership, true ownership. And I can be very brief on this, as Professor Meller has also elevated that to his first talking point in his discussion of the report. True ownership of the agricultural development agenda, of the rural transformation agenda on the heads of state level, on the entire cabinet level, as political will that does not only reside in a single line ministry, that develops a vision and a plan that is homegrown and that then institutions like ours can support, and not the other way around. And I think because it is homegrown, because it is a national and African agenda, it has a strong likelihood of having a much longer shelf life than an individual project cycle. And that, to me, is the most important message that I read out of this report.
Dr. Holger Cray. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Dr. Holger Cray, Mamadou Biteye, Dr. David Perry, Jonathan Said, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for your time. I'm sure we're going to be talking to you throughout the next 4 days. Thanks for these opening remarks, really setting the stage. Let's give them another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. You can take your seats, gentlemen. All right, and finally for this morning, we're going to have just a couple of people coming up to speak. And they'll be doing that very shortly, starting with Her Excellency Ambassador Joseph Sako, talking about commitments made in the last couple of years, commitments made. Ambassador Joseph Sako is the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture for the African Union Commission. Please welcome Her Excellency Ambassador Joseph Sako. Ambassador. All right, maybe she just stepped out for a little bit. In the meantime, Dr. Bahigwa, did you forget something or you just want to speak again? The African Union has consulted and it has agreed. Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, you will say something on behalf of commitments made, because it's a big deal, right? Commitments made. All right, ladies and gentlemen, last minute addition to this outfit. Please welcome back on stage, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, African Union.
Thank you, Jeff. On behalf of my Commissioner, Her Excellency Ambassador Joseph Sako, I'll make some remarks in line with the theme. The theme of the conference is Lead, Measure, Grow. In my opening remarks, I did mention that AU heads of state and government met in Malabo in 2014 and made commitments in what is known as the Malabo Declaration. They made 7 specific commitments, and in their call for action from the AU, the NEPAD agents, and other partners, they called upon these institutions to produce a report every 2 years on the implementation of the Malabo Declaration. The inaugural biennial review report was produced and presented to the heads of state this past January, with 43 indicators across the 7 commitments. So we as a continent have fulfilled the first word in the theme. We have provided leadership through the Malabo Declaration. Secondly, through the biennial review report, we have measured the progress that all the 55 member states are making towards the achievement of the goals and targets of the Malabo Declaration. So we have also provided leadership on the second word of the theme. Now, on the third one, on growth, that is the responsibility of AU member states working together with the private sector within the member states. And that is where the results of the biennial review report provide an opportunity for all member states to see the progress that they have made, identify areas where they have not performed very well, and use those results to formulate new national agriculture investment plans that capture those commitments and then implement. I should have mentioned that in the inaugural biennial review report, 47 of our member states reported, and it was the first one, and we have 55 member states. 47 of those member states reported. Out of the 47 that reported in that document, 20 member states were on track. 20 member states were on track towards achieving the Malabo goals and targets. So we as a continent, we are encouraged by the performance that we have seen by our member states. Of course, it could have been better. it would have been nice if all the 55 member states had reported and if all of them were on track. But being the first report, and there's going to be a series of those reports until 2025, because the Malabo Declaration is up to 2025, we expect increased performance, because the findings of the Banyo Review report provide detailed information that is very rich, that encourages debate at continental, regional, and national levels. And we would like all stakeholders to take this report very seriously, because it provides a platform that encourages review and dialogue of the agriculture sector. Going forward, the AU Commission, the NEPAD agency, together with our partners, including AGRA, we are working to support our member states to revise, update, or formulate new national agriculture investment plans which domesticate the Malabo Declaration, because it is only when the member states have domesticated the Malabo commitments and are implementing can we be sure that the goals and objectives of the Malabo Declaration will be achieved. And therefore, our message is that we would like the support of all of you, technical partners, financial partners, academia, to work with the African Union Commission, together with the NEPAD agents, to support member states as they domesticate the Malabo commitments in their investment plans to implement and achieve the common objectives and goals that we all aspire to in the coming years. And therefore, join us, support us as we try to do our best to transform agriculture on the continent. I thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Once again, Dr. Godfrey Bahigwa, Director, Department of Rural Economy and Agriculture for the African Union Commission. Thank you for that. Up next, Dr. Maria Flachsbath. She's Parliamentary and State Secretary to the Federal Minister of Economic Cooperation and Development for the Federal Republic of Germany. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Our host country, Rwanda, is a leader in many ways. It is ambitious on poverty reduction and on the SDGs. It is progressive on environmental protection and recycling, and it's modern in terms of new technologies. For example, there are car-sharing projects and a taxi app for sustainable mobility. And as a woman member of the German Parliament, I am especially impressed by the fact that you are the global leader with 61% women in your parliament. In our Bundestag, there are 30. So many energetic, ambitious women from all of Africa are here today. There are businesswomen, policymakers, or experts. They are in the audience and on stage, and that is really great. And, oh, one applause, isn't it? For all the women. So, and Chinua Achebe, the Nigerian author, once said, if you don't like somebody's story, write your own. And Africa, and Africa has long since started to write its own story. In the Agenda 2063, that story has been given specific goals for education and equal opportunities, for peace and security, for good governance and against corruption, and for innovation that brings sustained improvements to people's lives in Africa and elsewhere. And Africa is not poor. Africa is rich. I'm also telling that to my German colleagues. Africa is rich in terms of natural resources. They are wonderful. Energy and commodities. The foundations are there. And above all, it is rich in terms of creativity and ideas, of dedication to find answers to local problems. Of course, there are challenges, but there are even more opportunities. Germany is assisting its African partners in tapping this enormous potential, for example, through our Marshall Plan with Africa. It addresses trends that will determine the future of Africa and the entire world: population growth, climate change, and digital technology. Take the average age of the population, for instance. In Africa, it is 18. In Europe, it is 43. This is a great opportunity provided that there is enough education, enough employment, and enough income. We are working on that through our new initiative on training and job creation. And Africa's future will be decided in rural areas. Africa needs a more productive agricultural sector and, above all, more local value addition. According to the World Bank estimates, Africa agriculture and food sector could more than triple by 2030. Yields can be increased, but not through the old model: more land, more fertilizer, and monoculture. What we need is a resource-friendly productivity. 15 German innovation centers in Africa address that. Innovation is today's fertilizer. Through the centers, we support locally appropriate varieties for better yields, for example, a new rice variety in Benin, a modern knowledge about cultivation, soil conservation, and the efficient use of fertilizer and water, and mechanization and energy generation for storage and processing, for example, through solar dryers for rice in Ghana. And we support more and better training. Investing in innovation pays off. A competitive agriculture and food sector provides 2 to 4 times as many jobs as other sectors do. And we are expanding these investments in order to enhance local value addition. Obviously, if agriculture products are processed on the ground, there will be more profit for small farmers. In Kenya, for example, we support both animal husbandry and the processing of milk in local dairy factories. And of course, action is needed on the buyer side too. We are addressing this, for example, with regard to cocoa. Together with German chocolate producers, Germany has set up the German Initiative to Sustainable Cocoa. The target is to bring the share of fair cocoa in Germany to 70% by 2020. Economic growth requires an enabling environment. We are working for fair trading relationships. Above all, intra-African trade is vital, as envisaged the Continental Free Trade Area. 1.3 billion people. This would be the biggest market in the world, and it would boost Africa's economies above all. Some African governments would rather have 10 big investors in their country than 10% increase in aid, because companies create jobs, help develop local value chains, and give people better opportunities. We are using our money to lever private investment through export guarantees and investment protection. We advise governments in Africa on how to create a good investment climate, because enterprises need infrastructure, legal certainty, and an efficient administration. We also foster the development of African SMEs, and we have started the African Mittelstand initiative. Mittelstand is our German word for SME sector, the backbone of our economy. Small and medium-sized enterprises provide 80% of African jobs, mainly in the informal sector. We are helping to give them better access to financial services, local currency loans, and risk coverage. Our support covers a broad range of issues from training to certification. We know that strong partners are needed to make progress. Governments and official development corporations alone cannot succeed. Through our alliances, we are embarking on new avenues and are working even more closely with the private sector, scientists, and civil society. Africa needs African solutions to African challenges. Africa can become the leading region for agricultural development if we all take action. Germany is ready to do its part in it. Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Maria Flachsbach, Danke schön. Or if I could just paraphrase John F. Kennedy, just paraphrasing, he'd say, Ich bin ein Rwandan. Does that make sense? Is that? Okay, thank you. Moving right along. There goes my German visa. Up next, Mr. Leonard Mitzi, Head of Unit Rural Development, Food Security, Nutrition. He's also the DG of DevCo, European Commission. Please welcome Mr. Leonard Mitzi.
Thank you very much, and good morning, and thank you, Jeff. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, President of AGRA, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure and honor to express some key thoughts on this official opening session of AGRF 2018. After last year's AGRF in Abidjan, the focus of this year's African Agricultural Status Report on catalyzing state capacity to drive agricultural transformation is timely. Following the publication and discussion in the biannual review report of the African Union Commission on the implementation of the Malabo Declaration on accelerated agricultural growth and transformation for shared prosperity and improved livelihoods. And we are also honored to be hosted by Rwanda, which scored so highly in the CADE process on institutional mechanisms for mutual accountability and peer review, access to agricultural services, access of rural women to productive assets, empowerment, and linkage of smallholders to commodity value chains. I actually had the opportunity to look closely to such a transformation during a field visit we paid with our colleagues of the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program in the Nyanza district in the southern province of Rwanda. My take-home message from this visit was transformation has and is possible with a focus on land development, increased productivity due to robust investments, linkages with agricultural services, including the support from the Rwandan Agricultural Board and savings and credit cooperatives, amongst others, innovation, integration of the food chain, and clearly digital transformation in the entire chain. And this brought me to actually look at the commitments delivery since last year, especially on how to meet the SDG 2. Transformation, however, will only be possible if we unleash the full potential of private investment. A transformation agenda needs to place agriculture and agribusiness at the center of economic policy making, with a model based on value chains that are fair and inclusive. And I would like to just outline what we as European Union, what our narrative is, as we briefly explained once we discussed the external investment plan last year. New investment and financing mechanisms and instruments are being developed, and new funding has been made available. The European Union has launched the external investment plan, which strengthens our existing blending activities And in collaboration with our development banks, we are providing a guarantee fund with a value of around 1.5 billion to leverage greater investment in Africa and the neighborhood up to 2020. In the post-2020 financing proposal under the multi-annual financial framework, the proposal is to allocate up to 60 billion for guarantee investments. We are going to actually unleash the first guarantees under renewable energy and SMEs, and in the next years also in agriculture and agribusiness, and I will explain more specifically what we are going to do under agriculture. Private investment requires more than financing, however. It requires an enabling framework that cannot be neglected. Indeed, it is one of the foundations. Improvements in the enabling framework requires long-term engagement with governments at a local level, supporting their commitments. Budget support, as we are doing in Rwanda, is a privileged approach to improving the enabling framework, and we stand ready. Naturally, it requires the strong will of governments to lead on these improvements. The European Union has stepped up its efforts to strengthen local dialogues involving as well farmers' organizations. This builds on improved understanding of the local business climate, as well as including local private sector to such discussions by giving them a real voice in the dialogue with government. The CADEP biannual review is making a useful contribution to this local dialogue process. I would like to mention some recent EU initiatives for blending in agriculture amounting to around 130 million euros. These essentially take the form of first loss shares, so allowing other investors to enter market segments which they would otherwise not have considered, improving the investment prospects for smallholders. And I would like to enumerate, for example, the Huruma Fund with Cofidis and ACID in 2018, focusing on microloans to the tune of 20 million. An agribusiness capital fund with IFAD, focusing on tickets between 20,000 and 1 million euros to the tune of around 45 million. AGRIFI facility with FMO, aiming at 1 to 4 million brackets, and we have also been contributing to KFW's African Agriculture Trade and Investment Fund, which addresses the bracket 5 to 15 million bracket. Some concluding remarks. We look forward clearly to the next 4 days of discussion and debates, and we would like these debates and discussions to culminate in giving a framing for a delivery model. We spoke a lot this morning about implementation. We clearly need a delivery and implementation model that shows impact on the ground, with particular emphasis on women and women empowerment in rural areas, and also youth. The European Union clearly is very much involved on both fronts, both on gender empowerment and gender mainstreaming, but also on engaging better and empowering youth in rural areas. And secondly, to provide clear signals to the international community, to the donor community, financial institutions, international organizations, of the need to achieve a sustainable food future. And we should use this week's proceedings to feed into the next events, high-level events, which are coming in the next 2 to 3 months. First of all, the One Planet Summit, which will be at UNGA, the UN General Assembly, in two weeks' time. In Rome, the Committee on World Food Security, which will also have a ministerial panel in a month's time, and the Innovation Symposium, which will clearly discuss the role of innovation in agricultural food systems, which will clearly be the game changer, not least here in Africa. And also, last but not least, because this was not mentioned much until now, is to give a clear signal on the need to improve how trade and markets function, because an important part is the multilateral trade context and the prosperous trade environment, which will only be the way forward to have positive impacts on the creation of jobs and growth in rural areas. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Leonard Mitzi there. Appreciated the European Commission. Okay, last but not least, I'd like you to invite on stage Mr. Jack Koinange. He is the director of Interval Genève, SA. Jacques Koinange. Round of applause, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm impressed to be in front of this audience. Last year, during the AGRF, we have signed an agreement in front of the authorities in saying that rice was a very important component to West Africa and that we would develop a program on 3 countries, which are Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal. Since what has happened was regular meetings and working sessions with governments, the various partners, and I am happy to say that we have made tremendous progress. Production of rice is key to West Africa. As you know, it is the biggest burden for the West African continent. When Côte d'Ivoire imports 1.3 million tons, when Ghana imports 700,000 metric tons, and Senegal 1 million tons every year, it is a threat. It is jobs that our kids are not seeing. It is a huge pressure in terms of currencies. So these 3 leaders have committed last year that by 2025, when I say the 3 leaders, the heads of state, that by 2025, there will be no more imports of rice. Since in Ghana, the program Planting for Food and Job, the rice chapter, has been developed under the leadership of the Minister of Agriculture in close conjunctions with the other ministers, and it was mentioned earlier, with the Ministry of Finance, Trade, Industries, among others. In Côte d'Ivoire, early this year, the President Ouattara has decided to create an executing agency in order to be able to execute this program called ADERI, and has funded and requested for regular follow-up and reporting. In Senegal, the progress has been made with the Africa Development Bank and other donors, development partners, in order to be able to fund the first tranche of the infrastructure of the program. I would like to, many people, some of the people here know me. I'm that crazy person who keeps saying, we have to wake up. We have to do it now. We have to make sure that what we agree that we have to do it. We have to understand why in one specific areas we have 10 different donors developing their programs, being a GIZ, a USAID, JICA, COICA. We have different fundings in parallel from the World Bank, from Africa Development Bank, from Islamic Bank. There's a number of programs happening on this continent that have been deployed, designed, very often from outside. We have CADAP. CADAP is clear. No other continent has such a beautiful program. It just needs to be rolled. But to roll it, people have to sit, share the vision first. Once the vision is set, to organize how it's going to be rolled. I'm coming back on rice, because rice is probably among the commodities in West Africa the more complex one, because it needs irrigation. Irrigation ranges between $5,000 to $20,000 per hectare for irrigation. Can you imagine the amount of money? Our government don't have the budget. They have to raise it, because if they don't, a private sector would do it, but the private sector to do it would have to buy the land. We're going into land grab. This is not what we're looking for our continent. So it means that our governments have to do their business plan, how they can borrow the money and how this money will be reimbursed over a period of time. I'm just flying in this morning from China. I can tell you that lots of commitments have been taken there. Half of the amount for the infrastructure that is designed for the 200,000 hectares of this first program have been committed on Monday. What needs to be done now is the various actors to work together, share the vision. I'd like to recall 2 years ago, during the AGRF, I think it was in Kenya, and I do remember that the president of AGRA had the last day called in the various ministers of agriculture of West Africa in saying, the money is available for your programs. It can be rolled. What you need to do is develop your business plan, and then it will happen. I think this has been heard by some of the ministers, and since a lot of work has been done. I'd like to complete in recalling again one thing. How can rice be produced in the north of Vietnam, transported to the port of Ho Chi Minh, to Africa, discharged to the port of Abidjan, then reloaded on trucks all the way to Bobo Dioulasso. And then this rice is less expensive, is creating jobs for others, not for us Africans. We are sitting on a time bomb where our youth will not be waiting anymore. We've been talking for years and years. It's about time. It's about time to wake up, to align, to make things happen. It is the interest of everybody. It is the interest of everybody to make it happen now. So, just to finish, next year, I'm sure that somebody will come and report on this rice initiative to say where we are, what has been done since. The intention is that the infrastructure work will be starting during this year of 2018, and by 2019, the first program on 10,000 hectares each that has been committed will be under implementation and will be able to lead, monitor, report. Thank you so much.
All right, Jack Khan, good way to end this note. Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, President Kalibata, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, this brings us to the end of this first part of this morning's session. Thank you so much. 2 points I'd like to make before we do that. First, there will be a feedback survey. That'll be emailed to you from the organizers. Please send your feedback on what you think so far. And 2, shuttle service, I understand, was a bit of a problem this morning from the hotels. The shuttle service, here's how it works. Every morning, starting at 7 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m., the shuttles will be flowing from all the various hotels. And in the afternoon, evening, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day this week. Also, the coffee break, I have cut it down to 15 minutes, and I'll be monitoring. It's not my fault. So 15 minutes, let's have a coffee, let's hang out, and then we go into our breakout sessions. There is an app you should download on your phone. It tells you exactly where the sessions are, or just take it from the program. You will get AASR report over there as you go out as well. And there will be a press conference. Dr. Mukeshimana, Dr. Kalibata, Dr. Jennifer Blanky, Professor John Mellor, someone tell him over there, he might not be hearing. Ambassador Sacco from the AU Commission, all of you, 11:30 downstairs. Professor Mellor, are you with us? Yeah. Okay, thank you. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this. Let's go have a good time, enjoy the next 4 days.